news from across the Federation, spanning the region and covering the globe. This is the KyssFM SKN News Now Evening Edition, your one true source for news. And now your presenter.
Good evening, I'm Ebony Brandon. Today is Monday, 13th February 2017. This is the SKN News Now Evening Edition. Tonight, the headlines nationally. Honorable Marcella Liebert claps back as Police Commissioner Ian Quealy's press statement on Friday, calling it appalling and disingenuous. And Honorable Patrice Nisbet says there's nothing in the Constitution to legally bar Nevis from legislating the agricultural production of marijuana. Regionally, officials are concerned that HIV/AIDS patients in Grenada are not complying with their antiretroviral schedules, and internationally, North Korea's decision to test its ballistic weaponry has prompted an international meeting to discuss the possible international threat. These stories and more straight ahead in this evening's edition of SKN News Now. St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party chairperson Honorable Marcella Liebert has decried an accusatory statement issued by the Commissioner of Police Ian Quealy. Last Friday, the Commissioner of Police issued a statement expressing disappointment at comments made by Ms. Liebert at the National Crime Symposium on Thursday 9th. MP Liebert was accused by the Commissioner of leveling a baseless attack on the integrity of the police service, an accusation which she now says is untrue and disingenuous. Ms. Liebert explained in her statement that the Commissioner knew that she was criticizing the Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Timothy Harris, and in his capacity of Minister of National Security, and the government for politicizing the police force. She continued that she gave two examples to support her point at the symposium. She further stated that to her recollection, an official police report in outlining the arrest of an individual mentioned specifically that he was the brother of a former commissioner of police. On Thursday at the symposium, Ms. Liebert, an attorney, questioned the reason why it had been necessary to include that specific detail in an official police report. The Labour Party parliamentarian continued in support of her argument that the police force has been subject to political influence, that Commissioner Quealy had not disassociated the force from comments by the Prime Minister Dr. Harris during his first meeting with the force in 2015. Among other things, Dr. Harris told a gathering of police officers at the time that we got rid of them, an obvious reference to the Labour administration, which some police officers cheered in agreement to. MP Liebert has charged the Commissioner with deliberately taking her remarks out of context to make a political statement, and expressed her disappointment that the Commissioner allowed himself to be used to satisfy a political agenda. In other news, Nevis has the constitutional right to legislate the cultivation of marijuana. This is the legal opinion of veteran attorney Honorable Patrice Nisbet of the Nevis Reformation Party. The former Attorney General of St. Kitts and Nevis sought to put rest to the argument that the island of Nevis must await the federal government's approval to pursue the decriminalization of marijuana in order for it to be cultivated on the sister island. He said this is not so according to Section 37 of the Constitution of St. Christopher and Nevis.
So we have established that once you grow any crop in this country, you're engaged in the practice of agriculture. That's what we have established so far. And so I will now take you to Section 37 of the Constitution Order here in St. Christopher and Nevis. And I want to read just a couple lines of that section. Section 37(2) of the Constitution. This is what it reads. It reads, save as otherwise provided in subsections 3 and 4, the power of Parliament, and Parliament here means the National Assembly, to make laws having effect in the island of Nevis shall not extend to any of the specified matters. That is to say, matters with respect to which the Nevis Island legislature has exclusive power to make laws so having effect. And so let us go down to what is a specified matter. The definition of specified matter is found in section 119 of the Constitution. And it says, specified matter means in relation to the government of the island of Nevis, a matter specified in Schedule 5 to this Constitution. And let us go to Schedule 5. Schedule 5 of the Constitution says, matters with respect to which the Nevis Island legislature has exclusive power to make law. And the matter, first of all, the primary matter, it says, is agriculture. That's the first matter. That the Nevis Island legislature has legislative competence. It has legislative competence to make law. Schedule 5, not Section 5. It has legislative competence to make laws in relation to agriculture. So therefore, if the Nevis Island administration has power to make laws in relation to agriculture, doesn't it have legislative competence to make laws in relation to the growing of cannabis, sativa, or marijuana, whichever one you want to call it? And I say so. It is the Constitution say so. So when you hear some people talking and saying that the Nevis Island island legislature has no authority to make laws in relation to marijuana, it is nonsense. It is not, that argument is not based on no constitutional theory and no constitutional provisions. Because I have just demonstrated to you, in a simplified way, the legislative competence of the Nevis Island administration to make laws in relation to agriculture.
MP Nisbet stated that the Nevis Island legislature is allowed exclusive legislative powers on all agricultural matters. Therefore, he made the argument that the NRP, should they decide to do so upon being returned to public office, would possess the legal power and right to legalize the cultivation of marijuana on the island of Nevis.
The Dangerous Drug Act does basically two things. It makes the cultivation of marijuana illegal, and it makes the possession of marijuana illegal. But the Nevis Island administration the Nevis Island legislature under our Constitution has exclusive lawmaking power to say what can grow in Nevis. It has exclusive lawmaking power in relation to agricultural matters. And the growing of any tree, any crop, is an agricultural matter. And so this notion about it has to come, this legislation for the decriminalization of marijuana has to come from the federal government is nonsense. Because it does not align with the constitutional provisions that exist in the St. Christopher Nevis constitutional order. Does not align with that. And so if the Nevis Reformation Party get in power tomorrow and they want to make a law to say what grows in Nevis, what agriculture takes place in Nevis, they can do so. And they will be able to find constitutional shelter. Because agriculture is one of the specified matters that the Nevis Island administration has exclusive legislative competence within which to pass. It is within their domain.
That was the Honorable Patrice Nisbet. Former Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture on Nevis, meanwhile, Dr. Kelvin Daly, has expressed strong disappointment at new parking restrictions imposed by authorities in Charlestown without proper consultation, particularly with members of the business community. According to Dr. Daly, the sudden addition of yellow lines prohibiting parking is an indication of poor planning on the government's part.
When I saw those yellow lines come Monday morning, I was really dismayed because, to tell the truth, it came without warning. And persons, if you realize the explosion in vehicle ownership on Nevis has really is really high, and we have not made any attempts whatsoever in the last 4 years to try to accommodate the increase in traffic in Charlestown. All we have done is make it more inconvenient for persons to find parking while they do their regular work. As a business person in Charlestown myself, I am dismayed because 9 times out of 10, you cannot pull up and park and offload your vehicles. You have to be blocking traffic, etc., etc. And so it is really dismaying for persons who would have been living in Charlestown and working in Charlestown for all these years to finally be inconvenienced to having to drive round and round and round and round, burning valuable fuel, trying to find adequate parking. If the government had come and said, listen, there's a crisis in Charlestown with people double parking or whatever the issues are with blocking traffic, there are traffic wardens to deal with matters like that. There are persons issuing tickets in Charlestown, left, right, and center, if they find you in non-compliance with the traffic laws. I do not like this overreaching and overarching approach they have of simply dictating to people in Nevis all of a sudden overnight that you can't park here anymore without any justification whatsoever. No warning whatsoever, no planning.
Dr. Daly pointed out that the Nevis Reformation Party, while in office, had developed a solid plan for a parking garage to be built as the current traffic congestion issues in Charlestown had already been anticipated.
There's no strategic thinking on this part of this government because, like I said, come to the people and say, listen, we have a crisis in Charlestown in parking. In the next few months, we'll be looking at a possible site for persons to park that's close to where they're working, and give us some time to build a proper garage. I know for a fact NRP had the plans for that garage. I won't disclose where, but we had the plans already to move forward in providing parking. And this was 5 years ago. And you have to ask yourself, well, what happened to these guys? They must be sleeping, because if NRP was so visionary in their thinking, when we had 20 times less cars in 2013 than they have now, and we were already thinking ahead as to where and how we can solve issues regarding the parking, then these guys must just sleep at the wheel.
Another wave of weekend robberies has taken a toll on businesses in Port Zante. This time, it was first-class jewelry which fell victim to thieves sometime between 3 and 4:30 a.m. Today, assailants broke into the building and made off with a quantity of jewelry, handbags, perfumes, and electronics. No value for the stolen items was released up to press time. The theft was detected when a security guard identified a disturbance in the vicinity of the store and alerted police officers. Like the other robberies in Port Zante to date, no suspects have been identified. Information has also come to hand that the cable also experienced a break-in this weekend. They reportedly lost several pieces of electronic equipment. Police have issued a statement reminding the public that it is an offense to purchase or possess stolen property. They're also, again, appealing to members of the public who may have knowledge of these robberies to come forward with information which may help in cracking these cases. The verdict may have been handed down and accepted quietly by some last Friday, but Dr. Henry Brown, attorney for convicted drug runners Kenrick Simmons and Tennille Percival, says he will not settle for the guilty verdict against his clients. In an interview with local media, Dr. Brown, who described Magistrate Josephine Malalu's verdict on Friday as very disturbing, said the charges brought against his clients were malicious. It is Dr. Brown's contention that there was a lack of evidence to tie Percival and Simmons to the October 1st, 2015 drug bust at Connery Beach. During trial, the prosecution argued that WhatsApp messages found in Simmons' mobile phone proved that there had been a conspiracy involving himself, Tennille Percival, Greg Williamson of Antigua, and Obi Barron of Dominica, who was shot dead by police on the night of the drug bust, to import 124 pounds of marijuana into St. Kitts. It is Dr. Brown's position, however, that the search carried out on Simmons' phone was unconstitutional and therefore the messages found inadmissible as evidence. The messages in question between Simmons and one of the co-accused described, among other things, the location where the drugs were to have arrived in St. Kitts. The prosecution has admitted that the case against the men involved in the drug bust was built on a combination of direct and circumstantial evidence. Following the verdict on Friday last week, Director of Public Prosecutions Valston Graham said that the magistrate had obviously agreed that the evidence presented showed a clear-cut case of joint enterprise between the men to import the drugs. Graham added that while independently considered, individual pieces of evidence may not have proven them guilty, combined they painted a picture which showed collaboration and a clear plot to engage in the importation of the marijuana, which was valued at some $930,000. Given the verdicts against his clients, $300,000 to be paid in 5 months or 4 years in prison in default for Kenrick Simmons, and $60,000 to be paid in 3 months or 4 years in prison for Tennille Percival, Dr. Brown says he intends to appeal the decision against both men. Still to come in regional developments tonight, planning has begun for the establishment of a new state-of-the-art medical facility in Barbados. SKN News Now continues in a moment. Grenadian health officials are very concerned over the persons living with HIV/AIDS in the country who are not adhering to medication guidelines. We get the details in this report.
HIV/AIDS Response Coordinator attached to the Ministry of Education, Arthur Pear, says although the full picture as to the number of infected HIV/AIDS persons there are in Grenada is not clear, what he can say from information collected is that the infection rate among the male population is particularly high. He says given that fact, there is another concern, that of patients not adhering to medication guidelines, most times leading to fatalities.
So they come, they're sick, real bad, close to death, they are given medication, they are given antiretrovirals, and they bounce back. They're looking good, they're feeling good, and they stop. Okay, there must be adherence. You need to continue taking your medication, because if you don't continue, the virus operates in such a way that if you don't continue, the virus would again mutate, and when you have to go and take that medication again, it would not work as well.
He says even more worrisome is the medication's combination with alcohol by some patients.
That is a problem. Right? They actually put themselves even at greater risk, because they are damaging themselves with the powerful antiretrovirals that they're getting. So they are putting themselves at risk. So if you are HIV positive, you have to take care of yourself, and you have to adhere to the medication and how it's supposed to be taken, when it's supposed to be taken. There must be adherence. And I think that's one of the bigger problem that we have among persons. That's why we are seeing persons still dying.
There has been call by health authorities in recent times to increase public awareness about the disease. Pear says what is most effective is that of personal responsibility.
In Barbados, the government is actively pursuing plans for a new general medical hospital to supplement services available at the main healthcare facility, the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. This is the word from Minister of Health, John Boyce, who said the new medical facility, when complete, will deliver an advanced level of healthcare to the people of Barbados.
We continue to aggressively discuss the idea of a new general hospital for Barbados. I hope that is not misunderstood, and that we continue to share ideas with developers and investors as to how best we can come up with an arrangement that will see Barbados capable of delivering the kind of health care and having the kind of access that I referred to in 2020, 2025, 2030. We know we cannot do it in a modern way in all respects at our existing site at Martindale's Road. And therefore, as a responsible Ministry of Health, I want to assure you here tonight and the people of Barbados that we continue to aggressively discuss this matter of, while not, of course, reneging on our responsibility to maintain the facilities at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and all other healthcare institutions in Barbados in the best condition that we can.
The Jamaican government has announced a budget of more than US $5.4 billion or 709 billion Jamaican dollars for the 2017-2018 fiscal year.
Government is proposing to spend approximately $709.9 billion to run the affairs of the country in the 2017-2018 financial year. Finance Minister Audley Shaw tabled the estimates of expenditure in the House of Representatives yesterday. It reveals a $117.25 billion increase over the 2016-2017 budget. The bulk of the money is for recurrent or housekeeping expenses amounting to nearly $485 billion, $21.38 billion more than the $463.52 billion spent in 2016-2017. Spending on capital projects, meanwhile, is projected to be $225 billion, most of which is from government funding. It's $91.5 billion more than the previous year. Outside of the Ministry of Finance, the largest budgetary allocation is for the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, which has been allotted a total $100.42 billion. The Ministries of Health and National Security both have a little over $60 billion each, while the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation is getting approximately $32 billion in the 2017-2018 fiscal year. The Finance Minister also tabled the revenue estimates for 2017-2018. It shows that government expects to earn approximately $488.62 billion from tax revenue towards financing the budget. Non-tax revenue is projected at $27.69 billion. Another $13.9 billion will come from capital revenue. The government also expects to receive $4.35 billion in grant support from its multilateral and bilateral partners. Meanwhile, $70.62 billion will be sought from the external loan market, while $89 billion will be sought from domestic loans. In all, the government is projecting total revenue and loans of $694.21 billion to go towards financing the budget for financial year 2017-2018. Finance Minister Audley Shaw will provide more details on how the government expects to generate those revenues when he opens the budget debate on March 9.
Still to come in international developments tonight, North Korea's ballistic missile test has sent up international red flags. The details after a moment. The United Nations Security Council have met to discuss North Korea's latest missile provocation. The emergency meeting was called by the United States, South Korea and Japan in response to the ballistic missile launch. China and Russia have condemned Pyongyang for the test. Harry Fawcett has more in this report from Seoul.
Rumbling into view, the latest technological breakthrough in North Korea's growing arsenal. Inside this mobile launcher, a modified version of a submarine-launched ballistic missile. State media says it's powered by a solid-fuel rocket engine. No lengthy liquid fueling, allowing easier detection. Instead, a mobile, concealable weapon that worked first time. It's a concerning development for North Korea's neighbors.
The North is giving us a message that it will continue to provoke without giving up its ambitions for nuclear state status. Therefore, I would like to stress again that Pyongyang's threats to our military and security are serious.
North Korea's state media celebrated what they termed the complete success of the Pukguksong-2 missile, reporting that Kim Jong-un was happy to have secured a new means of delivering a nuclear warhead. Along with a submarine-launched Pukguksong-1, North Korea is apparently getting closer to the capability of striking first or indeed responding to an attack, the gold standard of nuclear deterrence. The range of these missiles is estimated by experts at up to 3,000 kilometers. An intercontinental ballistic missile, which could threaten the US mainland, has yet to be tested. In his New Year message, Kim Jong-un warned that North Korea was nearly ready to carry out such a launch. That would be a bigger test for the new US president, who before taking office tweeted that it wouldn't happen. For now, the US has joined Japan and South Korea in calling for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. Such meetings and the resolutions that spring from them have done nothing to slow North Korea's progress so far. The question for Donald Trump is whether to try something different, be that direct talks or some kind of military response.
Egypt is allowing 11 tons of construction cement into Gaza after temporarily opening the Rafah crossing. The move is expected to help with a slow reconstruction process that has frustrated many after the last war destroyed much of the coastal strip. Imran Khan reports.
Leila Kafarna wanted to start rebuilding her bombed-out house just after the war, but she had to wait until the Israelis allowed reconstruction materials into Gaza. After negotiations between the United Nations, the Israelis and the international donors, the Gaza Reconstruction Mechanism was formed in October 2014. The GRM, as it is known, places the UN as a broker between the Palestinians and the Israelis. It monitors materials coming in and appeases Israeli fears that the material might be redeployed for military use. Despite that, Leila waits. She was given some material to build, but for a year now the supplies have dried up and reconstruction is stalled.
After 2 years of waiting, all we have is what you can see, this half-finished house. The authorities gave us the usual excuses that there is no reconstruction materials because the crossings are closed, so we wait.
On the Gaza side, it is the Ministry of Public Works that distributes reconstruction materials to warehouses like this one. It's empty.
I believe that 30% of buildings bombed have been rebuilt. I have not been allowed to import materials into Gaza for a year now, although I have met the criteria, including installing cameras that the Israelis can monitor.
The United Nations Special Coordinator's Office says building supplies are getting in. Official figures show 88,000 metric tons of cement were delivered in January alone. The GRM is said to be working within the framework it has been given. People here are incredibly frustrated with the sheer amount of paperwork it takes to get materials and the time. Some people have been waiting 18 months. The man who's building his property here has only just begun after 2 years and putting down the foundations. For now, people continue to live in cramped conditions with extended family. There's no doubt they could be in their homes if the Israelis lessened restrictions and allowed the freer movement of goods, something that the United Nations has publicly called for.
That wraps things up for the first portion of the newscast this evening. Now for a recap of our major headlines. Nationally, Honorable Marcella Light has clapped back at Police Commissioner Ian Quealy's press statement on Friday, calling it appalling and disingenuous. And Honorable Patrice Nisbet says there's nothing in the Constitution of St. Christopher and Nevis to legally bar the island of Nevis from legalizing the agricultural production of marijuana. Regionally, officials in Grenada are concerned that HIV/AIDS patients are not complying with their antiretroviral schedules. And internationally, North Korea's decision to test its ballistic weaponry has prompted a UN meeting to discuss the possible international threat. Stay with us. Still to come this evening, Sports Zone. Tonight in Sports Zone, a tennis world number 2 player Angelique Kerber is trying to snag a major endorsement deal before her time at the top runs out. In 2016, world number 2 tennis player Angelique Kerber won 2 Grand Slam titles and a silver medal at the Rio Olympics. But despite establishing herself as one of the top players in the world, the German has struggled to attract big money sponsorship. Sohail Malik reports from Doha, Qatar.
Last year, Angelique Kerber established herself as one of the top players in the world. She won more prize money than any of her opponents, claimed 2 Grand Slam titles and briefly became world number 1. But the nearly $10 million she earned in prize money is just a fraction of what other players earn through endorsements. And Kerber says she wants to do more outside the game to increase her profile.
Tennis is my life, what I'm playing like the last years, and this will be always my priority. But to find the middle way to do also something different off court, everybody has to find the way where you feel good.
Angelique Kerber is centre stage here at the Qatar Open, but even if she builds on her successes of 2016, it doesn't guarantee she'll get the sponsorship deals she might expect. Serena Williams is the most dominant player in the game. She's won 23 Grand Slams and has received $14.7 million on average for the past 3 years from endorsements. Compare that to Maria Sharapova, who's won 18 fewer slams, but has earned more than Williams, averaging $21.7 million over the same period. And then there's Caroline Wozniacki. She's never won a Grand Slam, but has pocketed $9.2 million on average since 2014. Kerber has only been regarded as one of the world's best since last year. Some branding analysts say she needs to develop her appeal.
She's still developing her personal brand equity, as a branding analyst such as myself might put it. She's had a lot of career success already. She's already in the top 20 in terms of lifetime earnings amongst female tennis players. There are other factors that come into play that can really boost a player's earnings. Perhaps disappointing to some, sex appeal or the attractiveness of the player is one of those factors. It affects both men and women, but it's particularly apparent in the women's game.
The Women's Tour has also used the glamour of its players to promote its product. Its 2012 Strong is Beautiful campaign saw the world's top players in action while wearing party dresses. Kerber herself says she'd be open to doing such things in the future.
It's nice because it's something different and it's not standard.
Kerber does have deals with the likes of Porsche and Adidas. She's also gained over 500,000 Facebook likes since the start of last season. And while winning more titles doesn't promise a boost in marketability, it certainly won't do her prospects any harm.
New England Test captain Joe Root is ideally suited to the role. This is according to former England skipper Michael Vaughan. Root, 26, takes over from Alistair Cook despite having led in only 4 first-class matches, 3 for Yorkshire and 1 for England Lions. Root, who has played 53 tests, will not properly take over until the first test against South Africa in July, with England only playing limited over cricket for the first half of 2017. Vaughan, a former Yorkshire batsman, told BBC Radio 5 that Root is driven and has the right attitude, which makes him ideal for his new role despite criticism from some quarters that he's not ready for the England captaincy. His 4 matches as captain in first-class cricket have produced mixed results. In April 2014, his Yorkshire side conceded 472 in the 4th innings to lose to Middlesex, but later that year he skippered them to a victory over Nottinghamshire that sealed the county championship. And we'll be watching his captaincy in the latter half of 2017. I'm sure the reviews will perhaps change at this point. And finally, tonight in football, Swansea FC have been struggling to make an impact for some time now. However, in their recent games, they've shown a new ferocity which has enthusiasts asking, is Swansea on its way to a comeback? The BBC's Rod Glitstadt with Martin Keown and Jason Mohammed to discuss how Swansea and manager Paul Clement has begun to turn things around.
It is time to talk about Swansea City's resurgence. They look a completely different side, Ruud. What's happened to them?
I think they're better organised. I think that everybody now knows what to do. And of course, you know, when you have your first win, all of a sudden you get a little bit of confidence, and then you get. It is easy to get out, but organisation, I think, is the best thing they've done.
Paul Clement has also, obviously, Martin, lifted the gloom at the Liberty Stadium, because how many pundits sat here a few weeks ago saying Swansea City were heading for the Championship?
Yes, and it's been an amazing turnaround. They're on their third manager of the season. This is by far the best. He's been a coach for 10 years and he's proven his management material. 4 wins from 6. Today, though, they were at times very, very comfortable in a game where they weren't really tested. But I like the new signings. I like Olsen flying down that left, scored a very good goal. Sigurdsson coming into the middle. Carroll playing those balls forward. You can see he's worked with Pochettino. So, no, really good additions, and they look very strong today.
Can they keep it going, though, Ruud? That's the big question, isn't it?
Of course, you know, you're going to get setbacks, but it's all about how you get out of that. But as long as you don't lose these games, you know, you can also, you know, have games that you have a difficulty, especially against a better opposition. But just dig in, just try to stay organised. Don't leave any spaces behind you, and stay as tight as possible. And then you always have a chance, because you know, up front with Lorente is a good finisher, especially with the head. Leo Fair is also doing well, so therefore they have a decent squad.
And what about Paul Clement himself, Ruud? Because so long has been number 2 to Carlo Ancelotti at some of European football's biggest clubs, and here he is now making a role for himself as a number 1.
Look, I think that the difference is with him, I think because he has been with European coaches and he has been sniffing a little bit what happens outside of England, I think that is his greatest advantage he has, because he knows the games in England as well.
And that ramps things up for us here at the SKN News Now News Desk this evening. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Ebony Brandon, wishing you a very pleasant evening. We'll see you again tomorrow. Goodbye.